Why did a pharaoh 3,000 years before us order not one, but two identical sphinxes to be carved on a slab of granite? And what if that stone isn't an incomprehensible artistic whim, but the last remaining testimony of something that the sand has swallowed forever? Today we will investigate one of the most well-documented, yet at the same time controversial, places in our history. And we will do so through a collection of evidence coming from different and independent sources. But before we begin, if this channel has been accompanying you for some time into the territories where official history stops giving answers, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to support and sustain our work. The version we all know is simple, straightforward, and reassuring. The Great Sphinx of Giza is said to have been carved by order of Pharaoh Chephren sometime between 2558 and 2532 BC. A majestic monument, yes, but one that can be perfectly placed in a timeline that academic Egyptology has considered settled for over a century. But in 1996, two researchers, the geologist Robert Schoch and the writer John Anthony West, did something that no one before them had done with the same rigor. They stopped looking at the Sphinx as a symbol and started reading it as a rock. That's because rocks, unlike hieroglyphs, don't celebrate any pharaoh. They don't need to legitimize any power, and they carry no symbolic constructs. Rocks, in their simplicity, simply record layer after layer everything that has passed over them. Schoch and West, during their analysis, simply observed and identified deep, wavy grooves carved into the limestone body of the Sphinx. Grooves that do not correspond to the type of erosion that wind and sand produce over the course of millennia. In fact, wind erodes horizontally, smoothing and polishing. What is carved into the body of the Sphinx, however, is very different. They are deep, vertical channels with a pattern that is observed in only one other natural context: prolonged erosion caused by intense and repeated rainfall. The problem for official Egyptology is that it hasn't rained significantly in Egypt for at least 5,000 years. The last climatic period when the Giza region experienced rainfall of that intensity dates back to about 10,500 years ago, an era that predates the rise of dynastic Egyptian civilization as we know it by more than 6,000 years. In other words, if Schoch and West are right, the Sphinx was not carved by Khafre, it was found by him. Already there, already ancient, already forgotten under the sand, and simply restored, reincorporated into his kingdom. What do you do with something you didn't build, but inherited? This is a hypothesis that mainstream archaeology almost unanimously rejects, attributing those marks to more recent phenomena such as underground water drainage or the periodic flooding of the Nile. But this is a detail worth keeping in mind for the rest of this video. The first crack in the official chronology of Giza does not come from an esoteric book. It comes from a rock analyzed by a geologist. If the Sphinx were really older than we've always been told, there should be at least a second clue, independent of geology, pointing in exactly the same direction. And in fact, this clue exists, and it comes not from the earth, but from the sky. Using astronomical reconstruction software capable of simulating the position of the constellations, some researchers checked where the Sphinx was facing thousands of years ago, at the exact moment of sunrise on the summer solstice for every possible astrological era. The result was unequivocal. The Sphinx, which represents a lion, points exactly toward the spot on the horizon where the sun rose during the astrological age of Leo. An alignment that occurred with that precision only once in the recent history of the planet, around 10,500 BC. The exact same date that water erosion had already suggested. At this point, the coincidence is no longer isolated, because the same type of correspondence between architecture and the sky a monument built to exactly mirror a unique astronomical configuration, can also be found in two other places very far from Giza, both in terms of distance and culture. The Temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, aligned with the constellation Draco, and the statues of Easter Island in the middle of the Pacific. 3 civilizations, 3 continents, no documented contact between them, according to official history. Yet all 3 seem to speak the same architectural language, oriented toward the same moment in time. Or we are facing the most extraordinary coincidence ever recorded in the history of archaeology. Or it is the signature of something that came before all of them, and that all of them inherited. And this is where the document that started our investigation comes into play. Between the paws of the Sphinx, there is a granite stele, more than 3 meters tall and weighing 15 tons, erected in 1401 BC by Pharaoh Thutmose IV. It is known as the Dream Stele because it tells of a dream that the young prince supposedly had right in the shadow of the Sphinx. The deity is said to have appeared to him, promising him the throne of Egypt on the condition that he free her from the sand that covered her up to her neck. It's a beautiful story, and for centuries it was read only as political propaganda, an elegant way for a prince, who perhaps was not the designated heir, to legitimize his rise to the throne thanks to a divine sign. But at the top of the stele, above the text, there's a detail that almost no documentary has ever really investigated in depth. The scene doesn't depict one sphinx, it depicts 2. 2 crouching sphinxes arranged symmetrically, each identified in the text with the same divine name, Armakis, with the pharaoh shown making an offering in front of both, first with one crown and then with the other. For what reason would a pharaoh have depicted a monument twice, when according to the official version, there has always been only one? Academic archaeology has a ready answer, and we must be honest in presenting it to you. In Egyptian art, double representation is a very common symbolic device, connected to the concept of duality. The 2 lands, the 2 crowns, the gods represented in pairs to express cosmic balance. According to this interpretation, the 2 sphinxes on the stele would not be 2 real statues, but a graphic device. This explanation is undoubtedly very interesting, but it runs into a problem that is rarely fully addressed. If dualism is really such a deeply rooted principle in Egyptian culture, to the point of appearing everywhere, from the gods to the rulers, from the crowns to the temples, then why would the Sphinx of Giza, the most imposing monument ever carved by human hands in all of ancient Egypt, be the only striking exception to that rule? We're not talking about a small secondary relief. We're talking about the most important symbol of the entire complex. And what if, instead, the stele wasn't using a symbol, but was simply describing, as faithfully as possible, what its creator actually had in front of his eyes? There's another source, even older than this one, that reinforces the suspicion. In 1858, the Egyptologist Auguste Mariette, while excavating near the Pyramid of Khufu, brought to light another slab, the Inventory Stele. The text says that lightning struck the top of a second sphinx, also burning a sacred sycamore tree that had grown nearby, an event that, according to the inscription, would mark the beginning of the end for that second statue. So we have 2 documents, separated by centuries and different contexts, that independently tell the same thing, that in Giza, once, the Sphinx was not alone. If this were just a reading of ancient text, we could still dismiss it as mere philological speculation. But in the last 20 years, 3 completely independent sources with very different backgrounds, methods, and interests have reached, without knowing about each other, the exact same conclusion. The first is Bassam el-Shama, an Egyptian Egyptologist and expert guide at the Giza site for decades. For over 10 years, he has maintained, based on ancient texts and an in-depth study of classical and Arab sources that the Sphinx was not originally alone, but part of a pair, a lion and a lioness, according to the religious tradition that associates the twin sphinxes with the deities Shu and Tefnut, children of the sun god Soleatum. According to El Shema, the missing statue stood on the opposite side of the long processional avenue, facing the funerary temple of Khafre, and he indicated the exact location based on satellite images, which show a ground density anomaly right at that spot. The second source is institutional, and precisely for this reason, it is rarely cited as often as it should be, partly because someone within that very system did everything possible to make people forget it quickly. Between October 24 and 26, 2021, Reda Abdel Halim, who at the time was the Director of Public Relations for the Giza Pyramids District within the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, publicly stated in an interview with the Cairo 24 website that a rock formation identical to the existing Sphinx had been identified in the area of the pyramids. He provided precise measurements, 73 meters in length, a head 20.5 meters long, hands and limbs extending for over 15 meters, dimensions almost identical down to the centimeter to those of the Sphinx we all know. To support his statement, he cited a scientific study conducted by Zagazig University, but within a few days that statement was buried a second time, not by sand this time, but by the hierarchy. The former Minister of Antiquities, Zahi Hawass, publicly dismissed the news as pure media hype. He declared that the Great Sphinx is unique in Egypt and in the world, and called the reference to the Zagazig study false. A few hours later, Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, which is the highest authority in official Egyptian archaeology, also denied everything. He claimed that this rock had been known for a long time and did not have any features of a sphinx. But now let's pause for a moment on this point, because it's crucial. We're not talking about an independent blogger being silenced by a skeptical academic. We're talking about a government official with a verifiable name, surname, role, and date who was contradicted within a few hours by the two highest authorities in the entire hierarchy of Egyptian antiquities. Such a rapid, unified reaction at the highest levels to dismiss in just a few lines a statement that, if it had been true, would have represented one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the century. The third source, however, is the most recent one, and it's the one that has reignited the debate all over the world in recent months. In the spring of 2026, a research team led by Filippo Biondi conducted radar scans on the Giza Plateau, identifying what appear to be monumental structures buried beneath the sand, including, once again, a supposed second Sphinx. The same scans suggest the presence of a network of tunnels that would connect the entire area to a larger system of spherical passages. A network that would extend far beyond what has been explored so far with official excavations. So, in support of the hypothesis of a second Sphinx, we have an Egyptologist studying textual sources, a government official talking about concrete measurements, and a scientific team using radar technology. Three completely different approaches, three different eras, no coordination between them, yet all three point to the same spot on the map. And here we come to the question that, in the end, should be the simplest of all, and yet it systematically remains unanswered. If water erosion suggests that the Sphinx is 6,000 years older than what school books say, if the astronomical alignment confirms the same date, impossible if two Egyptian documents, separated by centuries, both describe a second statue. If an Egyptologist, a government official, and a team of researchers all independently arrive at this location, why nearly 200 years after the Dream Stele was brought to light, has no official excavation ever been authorized at that exact spot on the Giza Plateau? And we're not talking about a remote area, difficult to reach, protected by insurmountable logistical obstacles. We're talking about one of the most studied, most photographed, most guarded archaeological sites on the entire planet. If the official chronology of Giza really had to be rewritten, if it were proven that the plateau is not a cemetery built by an Egyptian dynasty 4,500 years ago, but the repurposed ruin of something built by a civilization that already existed 6,000 years before that dynasty, it wouldn't just be an academic correction. It would be the most radical revision ever made to the history of humanity. So why isn't this line of inquiry being pursued? Let us know in the comments what you think. And if you like the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it to support our work. Until the next story.